Time now for the Wells Report front page. This is Thursday, August 17th, 2023. There is polling information. It involves Republican candidates in connection and Donald Trump. The polling from Fox News says that Americans believe that Donald Trump did indeed do something illegal. In connection with efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Over half the registered voters think that former President Donald Trump did something illegal. 53% believe Trump did something illegal when it comes to efforts to change the 2020 election results, including most Democrats, 90%, 6 in 10 independents, 62%. Only about 10% of Republicans think the president did something illegal. That came in at 13%. In that same polling, an early read on the race for the Republican nomination in Iowa shows former President Donald Trump the clear front runner. Then there is a sharp drop to the rest of the field. The numbers are as follows. 46% of likely GOP caucus goers in Iowa back Trump, putting him in a category all his own. The next tier is Ron DeSantis, just 16%, 30 points behind, and Tim Scott at 11%. From there, Vivek Ramaswamy, 6%, Nikki Haley at 5%, Mike Pence at 4%, Chris Christie and Doug Burgum each at 3%. Asa Hutchinson, Francis Suarez have received 1% of the polling share. Out of Newsmax, this from Quinnipiac. President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump are in a virtual tie in a hypothetical matchup. This is according to Quinnipiac University. It was a poll that was released yesterday. According to the survey, 47% of respondents would support President Biden. 46% would back Donald Trump in a hypothetical general election contest between the two, who are both overwhelming frontrunners in the presidential primaries for their respective parties. The poll was carried out August 10th through the 14th among 1,818 adults and has a margin of error plus or minus 2.3 percentage points. Out of Fulton County, Georgia, this from the Colin Rugg podcast via Twitter or X. Fulton County Clerk Shay Alexander, who leaked charges against Donald Trump before the grand jury voted to indict him, claims she accidentally clicked send instead of save. Quote, "I have no dog in this fight," Alexander said as she complained about all the stress. "I am human." She also claimed the post was just a dry run of the incoming indictment. Fictitious was the best word I could come up with. It wasn't real. It didn't have a stamp on it. I tell my staff we want to be transparent. I don't have anything to hide. Out of politics this morning, the FTC is under the watchful eye of the House Oversight Committee and others. This from Fox News. Top Republicans on Capitol Hill are vowing to crack down on the Federal Trade Commission for allegedly destroying documents related to a congressional probe. Congress and the public deserve an explanation of why the FTC improperly destroyed records, what records it did improperly destroy, and what steps will be taken to ensure it never happens again. This from Senator Ted Cruz in a letter that was joined and signed by Representative Jim Jordan, an Ohio Republican, and chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, and Representative James Comer, a Kentucky Republican and the chairman of the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability. The letter by Republican legislators comes a year and a half after the FTC's in-house watchdog, the Office of the Inspector General, found multiple failures in the FTC's record-keeping process. Joe Manchin, the senator from West Virginia, has railed against the Biden administration efforts to re-implement the Inflation Reduction Act as a radical climate agenda instead of the IRA that was passed into law. Manchin vowed to push back on those who seek to undermine this significant legislation for their respective political agendas. The law is now at the core of President Biden's pitch to voters going into the 2024 presidential campaign, but with inflation less of a pressing concern, currently 3.2%, the president is pushing more emphasis on provisions of the law aimed at combating climate change and creating jobs, also lowering people's health care bills. State GOP lawmakers are working to protect Confederacy-era monuments. This from USA Today. Citing the vandalism of those monuments, Arkansas Republican state lawmakers passed a law in 2021 that prevents removing the Confederate-era monuments and supplants local control over dozens of other statues across the state. Arkansas is one of many southern states that have passed historic preservation laws to strip local leaders of the power to take down Confederate monuments in their communities. Bills in such former Confederate states as Texas and Florida could pass in a in other Republican-controlled legislatures this year. Now, similar bills are appearing in states that were not a part of the Confederacy, including New York and Pennsylvania. Out of Fox News, the North Carolina General Assembly completed an override of Governor Roy Cooper's veto of the Fairness in Women's Sports Act, which bans transgender girls and women in middle school, high school, and college from joining women's sports. HB 574, which is the Fairness in Women's Sports Act, was among multiple overrides in the House and Senate. It was made on last night. It passed the House by a vote of 74 to 45, while the Senate voted to override Cooper's decision later that same night. Out of terror news, KSM may escape the death penalty. Fox News is reporting the alleged architect of the September 11th, 2001 attack and several other defendants could avoid the death penalty under plea agreements being considered, according to a letter to families from the Pentagon and FBI. The letter was sent by federal agencies to several families and the thousands of people who were killed during the 9/11 attacks. It comes a year and a half after military prosecutors and defense lawyers began looking at a potential resolution to the case. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, as well as 4 others being held at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, are the people involved. The case has been hindered and delayed, particularly over legal issues of interrogation under torture that the men went through while in CIA custody. The Office of the Chief Prosecutor has been negotiating and is considering into pre-trial agreements or plea bargains, states the letter. Fox News reports that a Texas woman is behind bars after allegedly threatening to kill U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan. The federal judge overseeing Special Counsel Jack Smith's 2020 election conspiracy case against former President Donald Trump and U.S. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee. Abigail Jo Schrei of Alvin, Texas, is charged with transmitting a threat to injure a person via interstate commerce after being accused of making a threatening call to Chutkan's chambers in Washington, D.C. on August 5th, according to an affidavit, which was filed in federal court on August 11th. A San Antonio man, according to CNN, was arrested Tuesday after a teacher found a handgun in the backpack of the man's 3-year-old child at a San Antonio pre-K center, this according to police. An off-duty Parks police officer providing security at the center contacted city police officers when the gun was found Tuesday morning, according to San Antonio police. The child's father, Pete Robles, 35 years old, was arrested on charges of child endangerment. The child was placed in protective custody with Child Protective Services here in Texas, according to police. Elsewhere in the states, despite National Weather Service office in Honolulu issuing fire warnings for the islands in a run-up to the most deadly wildfire in American history, at least in a century, emergency management officials did not use all the tools at their disposal to warn residents of the unfolding disaster in the early day of the fires. According to county officials, outdoor warning sirens were not used for fires. Cell phone alerts may not have been received because of poor service. The state boasts having the, quote, largest single integrated public safety outdoor siren warning system in the world, unquote, with at least 80 sirens on Maui. But in recent memory, alarms have only been used during tsunami threats and monthly testing. Out of Arizona, USA Today is reporting after a Georgia grand jury indicted former President Donald Trump and 18 others on charges related to their efforts to reverse the results of the 2020 Georgia presidential election. Arizona is a state with a closer winning margin for President Biden. People are asking whether or not Arizona will pursue that same course. Reached Monday night of this week, a spokesperson for Attorney General Chris Mays said she would have no comment on the Georgia indictment. Quote, her focus, my focus, continues to be removing dangerous criminals from our streets. No investigation of the type you mentioned has been submitted to my office. In Pennsylvania, from the London Daily Mail, Philadelphia businesses are setting up booby traps like hidden sprinkler systems to fend off drug users. Local activist Frank Rodriguez has revealed that business owners in the Kensington area of the city are having to devise tricks to keep addicts off their stoops. Rodriguez said businesses end up throwing soapy water on the ground just so it is wet and is not a comfortable place to sit down. There are businesses that set up sprinkler systems. They set up these crazy little hacks and booby traps just to keep people off their stoops. Philadelphia has become overwhelmed by drug-fueled crime under Democrat District Attorney Larry Krasner, a self-described progressive prosecutor. His failure to crack down led to his impeachment in 2022 for dereliction of duty. However, he remains in office after his trial was indefinitely postponed. In Florida, a woman doused herself in Diet Mountain Dew to erase DNA after killing her roommate. This from the New York Post. A blood-smudged Florida woman suspected of murder accrued additional charges after she asked police where she was undergoing questioning for a soda and then poured it all over herself in an attempt to scrub forensic evidence from her body, according to Daytona police. Nicole A. Max, 35 years old, was charged with tampering with evidence and resisting arrest with violence and premeditated first-degree murder in the death of 79-year-old Michael Sarasoli. This on August 5th per a probable cause affidavit shared by Daytona police. Out of the academy, the UPenn president is being called to account for Chinese funding. This from Fox News. According to reports, the U.S. and Germany have given a combined $127 billion to Ukraine during the war, while the Chinese coordinated with Russia. And yet, China gave $100 million to the University of Pennsylvania under the watch of current U.S. Ambassador Amy Gutmann, the former president of the University of Pennsylvania. It has been revealed that Penn used the Penn Biden Center to schmooze donors during the 2020 presidential run of Joe Biden throughout 2019 and 2020. Meetings were confirmed to have taken place with future members of Biden's kitchen cabinet, including now Secretary of State Antony Blinken. According to congressional testimony from Paul Moore, the former head of investigative counsel for the Department of Education, there is a tape recording of the Penn Biden Center being discussed in an event in China, coinciding with a massive influx of money being donated to the university while Gutmann was the university president. That is the Wells Report front page for Thursday, August 17th, 2023.